I should have walked away the first time I saw her
Do you
smile.
think you can
It wasn't the
fix
kind of
it?
smile you're supposed to
I'm
notice,
not
too
sure.
private,
This
too
pipe
worn
is
at the
really
edges, like
old.
it belonged to someone who'd learned to hide more than she showed. But I did notice. I noticed everything. And that's where it started. She was standing in the doorway of her kitchen, hair still damp from a hurried shower, sleeves pushed up as if she'd given up trying to look composed. The faucet was leaking again, and my father had asked me to check it while he was out of town. That's how I ended up alone with her, crouched under the sink, tools scattered, pretending I knew exactly what I was doing. "Are you sure you can fix it?" she asked, leaning on the counter, arms folded like she wasn't convinced. "I think so," I muttered, tightening the wrench, though my hands were clumsy. Her voice carried something underneath, half doubt, half amusement, that made me want to prove myself. The kitchen was too quiet, except for the drip-drip of the faucet and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Every sound felt amplified, the scrape of metal against metal, the soft tap of her fingers on the counter, my own uneven breathing. "You're too serious," she said finally. I glanced up, bumping my head against the pipe. "Serious?" Her lips curved, slow, deliberate. "Like you're in a war with that sink." I laughed, rubbing the sore spot on my head. "Feels like it." Something flickered in her eyes, quick, there and gone. She wasn't just teasing. She was watching me. Not the way adults usually watch younger men, with a kind of indulgent distance. No, she looked at me like she was measuring something, weighing it. And it unsettled me more than the broken faucet. I tightened the last bolt, wiped my hands, and stood. She was closer than I expected. The space between us was small, too small. I caught the faintest trace of her perfume, something subtle, something she probably hadn't worn for anyone in a long time. "Better?" I asked, my voice lower than it should have been. She bent to test the faucet. The water ran clear, smooth, no more dripping. She turned it off and didn't move right away. Her hand lingered on the handle. Mine was still gripping the wrench, knuckles pale. "You did good," she said softly. It was nothing, just words. But the way she said it, like I had done more than fix a pipe, like I had reminded her of something she'd forgotten, left me unsteady. I wanted to say something back, something that would make her stay in this moment with me. Instead, silence stretched. She broke it first. "You know," she said, almost too casually, "your father would laugh if he knew I let you do this instead of calling a plumber." Her words should have pulled me back, but they didn't. They pressed harder on the thing between us, that unspoken shift neither of us wanted to name. "I won't tell if you won't," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Her gaze lifted, sharp and searching. For a moment, she didn't smile. She just looked at me, really looked. My chest tightened. Then she leaned back against the counter, exhaled slowly, and whispered, almost like a promise, "This will be our secret forever." The wrench slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a clang, but neither of us moved. The sound of the wrench hitting the tile echoed longer than it should have. She bent slowly, picked it up, and set it back on the counter. Her fingers lingered on the metal, almost like she needed a second before turning back toward me. I should have left then. Fixed faucet, job done, thanks and goodbye. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her avoid my eyes. The kitchen light was too bright, catching the faint lines at the corner of her mouth. Not flaws, signs of time, of living, but she always seemed to carry them like something she didn't want people to notice. "That line," I said without thinking, "the one you just said, you didn't mean it." She glanced up sharply. "What line?" "Our secret forever." Her lips pressed into a thin smile. "It was a joke. You take things too seriously." But her arms folded tighter across her chest, and I caught the tremor in her voice. It wasn't a joke. Not to her, not to me. I shifted, leaning against the doorway. "You didn't have to say it." She gave a soft, humorless laugh. "You think too much for someone your age." The words stung more than they should have, like she was pushing me back into a role I didn't want, too young, too naive. And yet, I couldn't stop watching the way her fingers rubbed at the inside of her wrist, absent and restless, like she was hiding something behind the casual mask. "Why don't you ever call a plumber?" I asked, filling the silence. Her eyes flickered toward the sink, then away. "Because it's easier to pretend I can handle things, even when I can't." She hadn't meant to say that, I could tell. Her face softened, regret flashing before she looked away. The words sat between us, heavier than the secret she had already given me. Danger. That's what this was. Not because anyone would find out, not yet. The danger was how easily I could start to care. I noticed things I shouldn't. The faint crack in her nail polish, the way her hair slipped loose from its clip, the tired set of her shoulders. All the small ways she seemed undone, and how badly I wanted to be the one she didn't have to hold together around. "I should head out," I finally said, though I didn't move. Her eyes met mine then, steady, as if she could see through the lie in my voice. She stepped closer, brushing past me toward the counter, but her hand grazed my arm in the movement. It was nothing, a light touch, an accident maybe, but it burned. "You fixed more than the faucet today," she said, voice low, unreadable. "Stay a little longer." My throat went dry. The words I almost said slipped to the edge of my tongue. "I don't want to leave." But I bit them back, because once they were out, there would be no turning back. I told myself I'd stay only a few more minutes. Just enough not to seem rude. But those minutes stretched thin, and I found myself leaning on the counter across from her, watching her pour 2 glasses of water like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You didn't have to," I started. "It's just water," she cut in, sliding the glass toward me. Her hand lingered near mine for a breath longer than necessary. I wrapped my fingers around the glass, pretending the chill from the water, not her nearness, was what made me shiver. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Every second hummed, like the room itself knew something we didn't want to say. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. I nodded. "Why are you always so careful?" Her eyes flicked to my hands, then back to my face. "Like you're afraid of saying the wrong thing." I swallowed hard. Careful. She didn't know that every word around her felt like walking a tightrope, wanting to confess, terrified of confessing. "Maybe I am," I admitted. Her lips curved, but it wasn't playful. More sad. Careful people miss things. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter. She snatched it up quickly, too quickly. I saw the name flash on the screen. Dad. Her ex. She silenced the call without a word, but her hand trembled just enough that she set the phone down face down. I wanted to ask, to press, to know what that single name still did to her. But I didn't. Instead, I asked softly, "You okay?" Her eyes shimmered with something unspoken before she shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I don't want to talk about him." The room shrank around us after that. Her guard had slipped, just for a second, and I'd seen more than she wanted me to. Vulnerability, raw and close. I started, pushing my glass away. "Probably let you rest." She reached out before I could step back, her hand brushing my wrist. The touch froze me. Light, tentative, but enough to undo every wall I'd tried to build. "You don't have to go," she whispered. I stared at her hand, at the faint mark where her ring used to be. My pulse hammered. I should have pulled away. Instead, my hand turned, slowly, almost against my will, so my fingers grazed hers. That's when the knock came at the front door. Both of us froze. Her eyes widened, hand snapping back as though burned. Another knock. Louder this time. I stepped back, putting distance between us, pretending my heart wasn't slamming against my ribs. She drew in a shaky breath, straightened, and whispered, "Don't say anything." The knock came again. Whoever it was, they weren't leaving. And all I could think, as my chest tightened, was that we'd already crossed something we couldn't take back, whether we opened the door or not. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it began. Whoever it was gave up, footsteps fading down the porch steps. But the silence they left behind was heavier than the sound itself. She exhaled, long and uneven, and leaned against the counter. I could see her chest rise and fall, see the tension in her jaw as she rubbed a hand over her face. "You should go," she said softly. The words cut, but they didn't match her eyes. Her gaze clung to mine, unwilling to let go, as if daring me to call her bluff. I shifted, hands tight at my sides. "Do you really want me to?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The air between us pulsed with everything unspoken. Finally, she whispered, "No." "But I should." Something inside me cracked. I'd been careful for so long, cautious with every glance, every word. But now, the mask was slipping, hers, mine, both. "Then stop pretending," I said, my voice low, rougher than I meant. She blinked, startled. For a moment I thought she'd tell me to leave again, shut the door between us forever. Instead, she stepped closer. "You don't understand," she murmured. "I've already made enough mistakes. I can't." Her voice caught, breaking like a thread pulled too tight. "I can't let this become another one." Her honesty was a knife and a lifeline all at once. She wasn't rejecting me, she was terrified of what we both knew. "You're not a mistake," I said. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Too raw, too honest, but true. Her breath hitched. For a second, her hand lifted, as if to touch my face, but she stopped short, fingers curling into her palm. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "I do. I notice everything about you. The way you tuck your hair back when you're nervous. The way you laugh like you're apologizing for it. The way you," my voice faltered. "The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention." Her eyes glistened, locked on mine. She didn't deny it. Didn't look away. The room was too still, too fragile. If either of us moved, the whole thing would shatter. "You can't say things like that," she finally breathed. "Then tell me to stop," I whispered back. Her lips trembled. Her silence was louder than any answer. Seconds stretched, unbearable. Then she stepped even closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her skin, smell the faint trace of her perfume. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, torn. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator, the pounding of my heart. Then she asked, voice breaking, "What are we doing?" The question hung there, electric, impossible, leaving me breathless, because neither of us had the answer. Her question, "What are we doing?" still lingered in the air when her phone lit up again on the counter. Not a call this time. A message. The preview flashed before she could silence it. "I heard he's staying with you." "That's not right." Her hand moved fast, flipping the phone face down, but it was too late. I'd seen it. The name burned into my mind. My father. Blood rushed in my ears. He knew I was here. He didn't trust her. Didn't trust me. She froze, her hand still over the phone, her eyes locked on mine like she knew I'd read it. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said quietly. My throat tightened. "Why would he send that to you?" Her shoulders sagged. "Because he still thinks he has the right to. Even now. Even after everything." The weight of her words sank into me. After everything. Divorce. History. Whatever pain she carried from him was carved deep, still bleeding. And now I was standing in the middle of it. I tried to steady my voice. "So, he doesn't want me here." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "He never wanted you anywhere near me. You think this is the first time?" I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then closed her eyes, as though bracing herself. "He used to accuse me of looking at you differently. Even before he left. I swore to him it wasn't true. That I'd never." Her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her forehead. "God, I shouldn't be telling you this." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My father had already suspected. He'd planted the seed long before tonight. And she had carried the shame of it, denied it, fought it, while I'd been blind to the storm around us. "You didn't," I said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her eyes opened, glossy, searching me as if she wanted to believe my words more than I did. "But I thought about it," she whispered. "Even when I tried not to. Even when I hated myself for it." The confession hit harder than the message on her phone. She had fought this, fought me, fought herself, and still, here we were. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. My hand hovered at her arm, aching to close the distance. You're not the only one. Her breath caught, sharp and uneven. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Her phone buzzed again, insistent on the counter, but she didn't look at it this time. You shouldn't say that, she whispered, voice trembling. Then why does it feel like we've already crossed the line? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. Her eyes were wide, frightened, but there was no denial left in them, only the truth, raw and exposed, between us. And for the first time, it felt like there was no going back. The buzzing stopped. The kitchen fell back into silence, broken only by the uneven rhythm of our breathing. She stood there, still as stone, her hand hovering inches from mine like gravity itself held her in place. We can't, she whispered. But the words were hollow, fragile. I know, I said. My voice was steady, but my chest was a storm. And yet, here we are. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for an answer I didn't have. For a moment, it felt like the whole world narrowed to the space between us, the faint warmth of her body, the tension in her shoulders, the flicker of something dangerous and tender at once. I've spent years trying to keep myself together, she said suddenly, her voice raw. To be who everyone expects me to be. Your father, my family, the neighbors, God, even you. And now, she broke off, pressing her lips tight, as if the truth itself was too heavy to let out. And now? I asked softly. Her hands trembled as she let them fall to her sides. Now you look at me like I'm still worth seeing. Like I'm not ruined. The ache in her words cut through me. I stepped closer, closing the last of the space, my voice barely above a whisper. You're not ruined. You're the only thing that's ever felt real. Her breath hitched. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd pull away. But instead, she lifted her hand and placed it against my chest, right over my heart. The weight of it was light, but it held me still, like she had anchored me to the ground. You don't know what you're asking for, she said, though her touch lingered. Yes, I do, I answered. I'm asking you to stop hiding. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She let out a shaky laugh, almost bitter, almost tender. You make it sound simple. It is, I said. Simple doesn't mean easy. We stood there, suspended, neither moving nor retreating. Then, slowly, she leaned in, not enough to erase the distance, but close enough that I could feel her breath when she whispered, if this happens, there's no taking it back. I met her gaze steady. Maybe I don't want to. The silence after was deafening, loaded, like the pause before a storm breaks. She searched me one last time, as if hoping to find hesitation. There was none. Her hand slid higher, curling around the back of my neck, tentative but sure. I closed my eyes as her forehead rested lightly against mine, a touch so fragile it felt like the whole moment might collapse if either of us breathed too hard. No words. No kiss. Just the truth, finally unhidden in the space between us. And in that silence, we both knew the line we'd feared wasn't a line anymore. It was a choice. And together, we'd already made it. The house felt different in the quiet that followed. Not the same silence we'd shared before, the charged, unbearable kind, but something softer. A quiet that allowed us to breathe. She stepped back first, her hand slipping from my neck, though her eyes didn't leave mine. There was no fear in them now, only the exhaustion of someone who had carried too much for too long, and the faint relief of finally putting it down. I don't know how this is supposed to work, she admitted, voice low, almost tentative. Neither do I confessed. But maybe that's the point. We figure it out. Together. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but close enough to feel like one. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't seem like she was hiding behind anything. No masks. No rehearsed answers. Just her raw, flawed human. The phone on the counter buzzed once more, lighting up with my father's name. We both looked at it, then at each other. This time, she didn't move to grab it. Instead, she reached out and slid it across the counter, turning it face down. "I'm done letting him decide who I am," she said quietly. I nodded, a knot loosening in my chest. "Then don't. Let it be us." Her gaze softened, and in it I saw the shift, the regret she'd carried giving way to something lighter, something closer to hope. And for me, the restless longing that had kept me circling her for so long no longer felt guilty, no longer forbidden. It felt like choice. We stood together in that kitchen, two people who weren't supposed to find each other, yet had. Not in grand gestures or perfect timing, but in cracks and broken places where something real had room to grow. The future wasn't certain. It never would be. But certainty wasn't what we needed. What mattered was that, for once, we weren't running from it. She reached for my hand, fingers intertwining with mine, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was grounding. A promise without words. Looking back, I realized the story wasn't about fixing a faucet, or even about the forbidden tension that kept pulling us closer. It was about what happens when two people, tired of hiding, finally allow themselves to be seen. And that's what changed everything.